Well, good evening. Not everybody knows who I am. My name is Daniela, as Brother Bacha mentioned. I came here about 10 years ago as a student. I took the program, but I'm originally from Europe. I'm from Germany, but normally I live and work in Belgium. But I've been able to take leave of absence from my work to, first to come here as a student and also to come back here. It was beginning of 2015 to help out as a volunteer for some time, and I will be here a little while longer before I will return to Europe for good. And it was 2 weeks ago when I shared basically my life story, how the Lord led me to His church and how I ended up at the European Union headquarters in Brussels as an administrative assistant. And many of you were not here, but it's not a problem. Because today I'm going to elaborate on a few points and also share some of the spiritual lessons that I've gleaned. And one thing that I didn't mention last time, it was shortly before I decided to get baptized, at a certain point in my life when I could really see the ugliness of sin in a way I had never seen it before. And I had very much the desire to be cleansed. And it was only a few weeks after that when I had this aha moment, when I woke up in the morning and I thought, I want to get baptized, still this year. So that was back in 1995. But of course, I was only at the very beginning of my Christian walk at that time, and I still needed to grow in many areas of my life. And I would like to share a few of those areas where I experienced God's transforming power. Speaking about dress, for example. Of course, at that time, I didn't know anything about dress reform yet. That was much later. And generally, even before I became a Christian, I didn't dress in an immodest way, but I didn't see a problem to come to church in a mini skirt, for example, every now and then, because I saw women in the church who even wore shorter skirts than I did, so I didn't consider this a problem at all. But I remember one time there was the first elder of my church. He had a little talk with me, and he said something interesting. He said, "You ladies, you should spare us men." And I thought, what? What does he mean? I mean, he was happily married for like 40 years, and he was making such a statement. And shortly after that, there was a marriage seminar in our church, and the pastor shared about the difference between men and women, that men get more aroused by what they see, actually. And to me, this was new information. I didn't really know that. I wasn't aware of this. But it opened my eyes, and you know what? I didn't feel comfortable anymore in my short skirts. And on another issue was jewelry. In Germany, the church in general is a little bit more liberal when it comes to jewelry. It's not uncommon at all to see ladies with earrings and other kind of jewelry. But my pastor, the one who gave me baptismal studies, he was very biblical, and he explained this to me from the Bible, what Paul said to the women, that they shouldn't adorn themselves. But I didn't see the point. And I didn't want to stop wearing my earrings. And for some reason, the pastor didn't want to make this a test of fellowship. So I got baptized anyway. But you know what? About 2 years later, I didn't feel comfortable anymore with my earrings. I just wanted to put them away, and ever since, whenever I see a woman with jewelry, I always think, well, this lady could be so much more beautiful without this outer adornment. So the Lord transformed me in these areas. Another point is sanctification. This is not a message that's very popular in the Western churches in general. The fact that the Lord wants to sanctify us and that we can actually overcome sin. This is not very much preached in the churches where I come from. And it took a few years actually until I first heard about that. It was, first of all, it was through this ministry that I started working with in Germany. This ministry was founded with the help of the Standish brothers and of Ron Spears from Hope International, and I was asked to translate articles from English into German, and I found many of those truths, because it is biblical that we can overcome sin and that the Lord wants to refine our characters. And last time I had also shared about Pastor Samuel Monnier. He used to work for the General Conference, and he's originally from Switzerland, and he used to come to Germany to give seminars, and the main subject was character building, and he encouraged us to pray every hour to God to help us to overcome a certain character weakness. And I found this a very good exercise, and I was very blessed by that. And there's a quote from Signs of the Times, 23rd of January 1896, and it says, "When the truth first finds man, it finds them possessed of the spirit of the world, but it does not leave them with this spirit. When the truth is received, it begins to work the work of sanctification upon heart and mind and character. The truth purifies, elevates, and transforms the soul until man reveal a likeness to the character of him who gave himself to save a perishing world." So the Lord taught me a lot of lessons over the years, and he showed me many weaknesses. And he has helped me in this process of sanctification. Another area that I would like to touch upon is the area of relationships. Well, I had shared last time about a relationship that I was in before I decided to get baptized. I had met him at exactly at the same time I got acquainted with the Adventist Church, and he professed to be a Christian, but he had his own ideas, and I soon realized he wasn't really a Christian, and he was not going to go the same path. And I realized I had to take a decision. And he was a physician, and he was very unselfish in many ways. He would take unpaid leave from his work and go to third world countries to distribute medication and teach people about alcoholism and stuff like that. And people asked me, so why didn't you marry him? I mean, he was a really good medical missionary, wasn't he? But the problem was he was not really a follower of Christ. And there's an interesting statement here in a General Conference Bulletin, 1st of April, 1903. And that says, "Medical missionary workers should be encouraged and sustained. And let them remember that they are working for the Master. Unless they do this, they cannot exert a strong influence for good in the world. And they must ever keep clear and distinct the line of demarcation between worldlings and those who are carrying the gospel of the kingdom to the world." And this is very important to see, that because there are many people out there who do many good things, but they are not working for God. And this was exactly the problem. And this man, actually, he pursued me for several years after my baptism. And at some point, he even wanted to get baptized, but only because of me. And I said, no, this is not going to happen. But God can even take away our affections, because there was not even a moment when I was inclined to go back to him. And it was at my baptism, actually, there was one of the deaconesses. She took me aside and she implored me, actually. She said to me, don't marry a non-Adventist. It's not good. And actually, she was under the impression of an experience that she had just gone through with her own daughter, who had married a non-Adventist, and she had seen this misery. And so she gave me this advice, but for me, this was never a question that I wouldn't want to marry somebody outside of the church. But I thought I would be able to start a family within a few years after my baptism. This was, no question for me. And if somebody had told me that, at the age of 45, I would still be single and without children, I would have told them, are you kidding me or what? And it was not that I didn't have opportunities to meet new people in the church, but nothing really worked out. And I was in my 20s, and I had this God-given desire. I mean, it is a God-given desire, isn't it? I mean, if I hadn't had this desire to get married, I would have been a rather unusual person. Of course, there are people who are completely content with being single, and they think that this is their calling, but it's clearly a minority, isn't it? I have hardly met those people, actually. And it's a gift, isn't it? And but I saw the Lord's leading in all of this. I enjoyed my single life. I had many opportunities, and still there was this desire. And I remember it's a few years back at one of the GYC conferences, they had David Asscherick as one of the main speakers, and he talked about 1 Corinthians 7, verse 9, where it says, if they cannot contain themselves, they should get married so that they don't burn with passion. And that was his advice to the young people there. So if you cannot contain yourself, get married. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, well, thank you, Brother Asscherick, for this wonderful advice. But shall I marry myself or what? And of course, people try to set you up, and these people all mean very well. And I could share some stories about things that happened that were quite interesting, but I don't have the time for that. But it's the Lord's timing. And I shared last time this wonderful quote from Desire of Ages, page 25. But like the stars in the vast circuit of their appointed path, God's purposes know no haste and no delay. Of course, the statistics say that, actually one pastor told me, in our church there is one man on 7.5 women. I don't know if this is true. It probably depends on the area where you live. But those statistics don't tell anything about the Lord's ability to provide, do they? I mean, I could live in Loma Linda, where there are many, many eligible singles, and there's no one there for me. Or I could live on an island with only 10 Adventists, and there's exactly the one. Actually, the Lord can pick up somebody from the other side of the globe and drop them off right here on campus. I mean, there's nothing impossible. And as I said, I saw the Lord's leading in everything because I had the opportunity after my training as an administrative secretary to go to Brussels. And if I had gotten married, this would have been difficult. So I got this job there as an official with the EU institutions. And then later on, a few years later, I was able to take leave and come here to UT Pines as a student. And again, being married and having a family, this is very difficult to get this kind of training. And in the beginning of my 30s, I was still thinking, well, it would be nice to have a family. And actually, when I was like 16 years old, I always thought, I'm going to get married in my early 20s, and my first child I'm going to have at 25, because my mom had me at 25, so I thought this would be normal. But then when I was 25, I thought, well, I was still in college, and I thought, no, I wouldn't want children in the next 5 years. And then at 30, I had just started my career. So, no, in the next 5 years, I don't want any children. And of course, people put pressure on you. So you are in the fertile age and things like that. And thank you for reminding me. And at 35, I was here at UT Pines as a student. And that was the first time when I started thinking that maybe it's not the Lord's will at all that I have children. Of course, it was still possible at that time, and I thought, maybe if the Lord leads it that way, but I didn't feel like I actually had to have children. And I thought, well, if it's Lord's will, okay, but not in the next 5 years. Then when I turned 40, I thought, well, it would still be possible, but not in the next 5 years. But I realized I couldn't keep saying this. But now at 45, I have evidence that it's not God's will for me to have children on my own. I remember Dr. Agatha Thrash, she wouldn't even recommend to a woman above 35 to even try to conceive because of all the risks involved. And I'm in complete peace with that. Because the Lord has called me into a ministry, and I consider the EU institutions in Brussels as my primary mission field. And with child, I always committed early in my Christian walk that if I have children, I would stay at home. But who would replace me there in Brussels then? And we are about 10, 12 Adventists there, but I'm the only medical missionary. So I feel it's my calling to continue the work there. And I'm not playing down the concept of having a family. You mothers out here, you are doing a great job. And it's to being a homemaker is, in my view, it's the most important task in the world. But not everybody is called to be a parent. And I'm still very open to the idea of getting married one day, but I definitely don't want to be mismatched. And to the singles out here, I can only say, don't wait for somebody to complete you. Because then you really set yourself up for disappointment. And unfortunately, I've seen many miseries around me. There's one friend of mine, she got divorced and remarried. Another friend, she got divorced and remarried even 2 times, even before she turned 30. And it can be, you can make your life a misery with the wrong partner at your side. So this has to be carefully considered. And actually, I remember a little episode that happened in Bolivia. I spent a few months there in the fall of 2014. And I remember we had an evangelistic campaign there. And one evening, the wife of the evangelist came up to me and she said, so you are the wife of? And I said, of nobody. And this was a little bit an embarrassing situation, not really for me, but for her rather, because she had confused me with somebody else. And maybe I should have said, I'm the wife of Jesus. But maybe this would have confused her even more, because Jesus is a very common name in South America. But we are not defined by our marital status. In Colossians 2:10 it says, and ye are complete in him, which is the head of all principality and power. He is the one who completes us, and he is the one who fills the gap as long as we are single. And it's definitely worth waiting for the right person. I remember I had one teacher here at UG Pines. She first got married at the age of 49. And last year I had a lifestyle guest. She first got married at 56. So it's the Lord's timing. He thinks differently about age than we do. And actually I have one, I call him my baptismal brother. He's a Russian German. And we were baptized on the same day. And his first language is not German. And the Russian Germans, they express themselves in a very simple way. And I remember one day we talked about my dilemma. And he said to me, you know, it might be a problem for you, but you know, for God, it's not a problem. and it's, yeah. Do you think that God sits there and thinks, how can I find a husband for her? How can I find a wife for him? I mean, it's really not a problem for him. And if I don't find contentment in the here and now, I will never find contentment on this earth. So there's one more point I wanted to elaborate a little bit more on that I had mentioned last time. I had shared that as a teenager I suffered from depression quite a bit, and I was even hospitalized at the age of 16 for 3 months. And this didn't automatically stop after I became a Christian. And it was actually shortly after I had given my life to Jesus, I was about 18 years old then, that I became depressed again. And at this time I did a training as an educator at a Christian organization. It was in another town. And this included an internship at a facility that provides apprenticeships for adolescents with learning disabilities. And that was very hard for me. And that was, maybe the main reason I got depressed. And my grandmother knew about a neurologist in town. Actually, she had gone there with my uncle when he was a teenager, because this runs in a family, and quite a few of my family members also suffered from depression. And so I saw this neurologist, and he put me on lithium. And those of you who are trained in the medical field know that this is something very commonly prescribed for depression, especially for prevention of depression. But in my case, it really helped me out. It was probably also because I had this new perspective at that time, that I could go to college to become an exercise physiologist. And I was doing pretty well for the next few years. In the meantime, the neurologist died, and another took over his practice. And he was a very good doctor. And I never really felt comfortable with taking medication long term, and especially with this lithium. It has some side effects, and you have to check your level, your blood levels every 3 months and things like that. And I didn't want to be dependent on that. And my doctor, when I told him I would like to stop taking this, he said, "You have my full support." And so he gave me the go-ahead. And it went well for a short while, but then I got depressed again. So I had to go back to lithium eventually. And it went well again for a few years, and I wanted to stop taking it really bad. But this time my doctor didn't support me anymore because he had seen what had happened before. But I went ahead anyway. But guess what happened? A few months later, I got really depressed again. And I was in denial first. I really didn't want to go back on this medication, but finally I had to give in. I had to see the doctor again, and so I started taking this medication again, and this lithium, it became like a crutch for me. So whenever I was taking it, I was fine. Of course, I still had my ups and downs, like everybody has, but I was never suffering major depression. And this time I was really scared of discontinuing it. And so the years went by, and in 2005, I first visited Uchee Pines. So it was my very first visit to check out the place, to see whether I would like to take the training program here. And I was a little bit stressed with my work in Brussels, so I decided to receive some treatments at the Lifestyle Center. And there was a chance that my health insurance would cover part of this, but for this I had to see a doctor. So I had a medical consultation with Dr. Horsley. Many of you remember him. And I told him about my medical history, and he told me that there was a psychiatrist on staff here at Uchee Pines who did phone consultations. But I was not open to this option at this point. But in 2006, I became a lifestyle educator student, and then I met this psychiatrist in person, Dr. Walter Strachan. The Lord bless his soul. And eventually he became my teacher when I was a lifestyle counselor student. And finally I counseled with him about my problem. And he strongly encouraged me to get off this lithium. And he explained to me, this in the long term, this can destroy your thyroid and your kidneys. I thought, he's right. I should really get off this, because there will be a point in time when we cannot even get medications. So I shouldn't be dependent on that. And so I decided to taper off very, very slowly over the course of 1 year, actually. And Dr. Strachan helped me a lot during this time. And he actually had a very simple approach, and which was yet very effective. He would always tell us to pray the following prayer: Lord, take all thoughts away from me and give me your thoughts and tell me what to do. And he also taught me about lifestyle, the importance of lifestyle in the treatment of and prevention of depression, and especially he always taught us about the importance of getting up every morning at the same time. Of course, for everybody it's important to be on a good schedule, a regular schedule, but especially for people with emotional issues, it's very important to get up every morning at the exact same time. Because the time you get up in the morning is the most significant event during the day to get your circadian rhythm synchronized and working most efficiently. So only then the body can work at peak efficiency. So he told me, pick a time in the morning as early as possible that you can live with 365 days per year. And this locks in the body rhythms with each other in a harmonious manner. And to me specifically, he also recommended that I go to bed every night, no later than 9 o'clock. So since February 2008, I'm off lithium. Praise God, yeah. And for the following 2 years, I was not suffering major depression. I did have my ups and downs, but the Lord helped me through that. And it was the beginning of 2010 when Dr. Strachan had this terrible accident. And then I wasn't accountable to him anymore. And it was already before that when I got a little bit inconsistent with my lifestyle. And it started that year when I suffered major depression again. And it was about once per year when I got depressed for several months. And it always came just out of the blue. There usually wasn't any particular trigger. I would just give in to these negative thought patterns, feelings of worthlessness, and I have no future, and things just looked bleak. And I would only confide myself to a few close friends who would pray for me. And I was determined not to go back on any medication again. And by God's grace, I always got out of it without having to see a doctor. And it was in 2014 when I was planning to take another leave of absence from my work, to do something different again, and also to come to UT Pines again to refresh my skills. But in the spring of that year, I got depressed again. And again, it dragged on, and I didn't know what to do. And I was still very determined not to take any medication. And I also counseled with my spiritual parents at that time. They are here, they live here in Tennessee. And they told me about a supplement based on micronutrients that are especially good for brain health. And I started reading about that, researching about that, and I heard about people who really got helped with this supplement. And but it was not available in Europe. But my spiritual parents happened to come over to Europe that summer, and I asked them to bring me this supplement. And you know what? I started taking this, and after a few days, I felt better. And things started improving from that point on, and I thought maybe this is my solution. I have to take this supplement and I'll be fine. And then I took off that fall. I went to South America for a few months, and then in the beginning of 2015, I came back to UT Pines as a volunteer, initially only for a few months. And that it was a big change. The work in the new Lifestyle Center had started 5 years before, but I had been trained in the old Lifestyle Center, so I had to get used to this new facility, and it was really overwhelming. But the Lord helped me through. I almost got depressed at that point, but the Lord helped me through. And I decided to extend my stay at UT Pines a little longer, but I went home to Europe for the summer. I had some projects there, and in September of that year, I came back to UT Pines. And it was that fall when these negative feelings started flooding my mind again, out of the blue. I had worries about the future because I had planned to go back to my work in the fall of 2016, and I thought, oh, how in the world can I stand in this secular environment there in Brussels, and how is this going to happen? And also I had this feeling that I'm not a good lifestyle counselor. The others are all better than me. And there was nobody really I could talk to here on campus. Because I wasn't supposed to be depressed. I was a lifestyle counselor. I was supposed to help people with not only with physical, but also with mental and spiritual issues. And how could I do this? I mean, if you work on the farm here or on the grounds, you can be depressed. I mean, it's not a real problem. You may not even get depressed if you work on the farm, for example, because we know there are antidepressant microbes in the soil, so you may not even get depressed if you work in that department. But I could not afford it. And so I just masked. I just pretended I was doing well, and apparently I did a good job. And it was actually during that time when I had some of my most difficult cases to deal with. And there was one lady that came here, an elderly lady with obsessive compulsive disorders. And I thought, oh no. So I have emotional, mental problems, and I'm supposed to help somebody now with mental problems. How in the world can I do this? And that was the time when Dr. Horst Müller was here. He was counseling the lifestyle guests, and he was also giving a seminar in Phoenix City. But I didn't take the opportunity to talk to him about that. I talked to him about my problem 20 years before when we were both studying at the same university in Germany. But at that time, he was not into those matters of the mind yet, so he couldn't help me. And I was convinced he couldn't have helped me now because I knew everything already. I had to act on what I knew. And then in January of last year, my paternal grandmother passed away. And this was the last thing I needed. So I had to go to Germany for the funeral. And a jet lag is not a good thing if you are depressed. But the Lord sustained me. I spent 2 weeks with my family. And I came back in February, and I just, thought, well, I just complete my time here as I had planned until the summer, and then, hopefully everything will get better at some point. But but I was still depressed, and I remember one day in February, I was walking through the hallways in the Lifestyle Center with an onion in my hand. I was about to make a poultice for my lifestyle guest, and I bumped into Brother Champion. And he asked me, oh, Daniela, wouldn't you like to share your personal testimony with us on Friday night? And I thought, oh no, this was the last thing I felt up to in this situation. And I started stammering, and I tried to explain to him that I couldn't do that. And I told him, I already did this when I was a student. And he said, oh, many people are not here anymore. There are new people now. But finally I burst out in tears. And he asked me to come to his office, and he prayed with me. And he shared one verse with me in Psalms 42:11. Why art thou cast down, O my soul? And why art thou disquieted within me? Hope thou in God, for I shall yet praise him, who is the health of my countenance and my God. And this was actually, it's a verse that I had committed to memory already. And the full implication only becomes clear to me now, actually, because it says, for I shall yet praise him. So even if I don't feel like praising the Lord now, I can still look forward to be able to praise him for what he will do for me. And from that day on, things went uphill. So very gradually, I got out of this depressed state of mind. And there was also a Bible text that encouraged me during that time. It's in Isaiah 43:18 and 19. I shared this last time already. Remember ye not the former things, neither consider the things of old. Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. Shall ye not know it? I will even make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. And I realized that this is a promise not only for the people of Israel back then, but it's for me specifically also. And that summer, we had our camp meeting again in Germany with my ministry, and I was asked to give a worship talk there, and I shared exactly this experience. And then also in September, I was asked to speak at my church in Brussels. By the way, I never considered myself a preacher, but the elder approached me and asked me, "Oh, don't you want to share your experience during divine service?" And of course, yeah, I had something to share, so I said yes. And I talked about this, about how the Lord helped me in this experience. But I didn't feel quite ready to return to Brussels for good. And that's why I came back here last fall. And as many of you know, in February, with a small team from here, we went to Honduras for a mission trip. And there I was asked to speak for Sabbath school at one of the churches that we visited. And I decided to share this experience again. And I remember one of my team members told me afterwards, "Why didn't you tell me? I could have at least prayed with you. Why didn't you tell me that you were depressed?" And it's really easy to overlook the suffering that's going on around us. And I remember one experience. I had a roommate when I was a student here. And after the LE program, she stayed on as a worker for a little bit here at UG Pines. And at some point, she stopped coming to church on Sabbath. And I asked her, "Well, what's the matter?" And she told me, "Oh, it's so, it's so tiring to work in the cafeteria. I just need to catch up with sleep." And I remember Sister Böttcher, one day she asked me about this sister, and she asked me, "What do you think about so-and-so? Is she depressed?" And I told her, "Oh, no, she's fine. She just needs to catch up with sleep." But in retrospect, it's so clear to me that from the way she acted, she must have been depressed. And now I regret it that I didn't reach out to her. Well, I'm coming to an end, quickly, hopefully. It was towards the end of our Honduras trip when I started to have these negative feelings again. And I was fighting it, but they just crept in. And in the beginning of March, I went back to Europe for 1.5 months, and I was supposed to speak at the French-speaking church in Brussels for divine service, and I had planned to share the same experience again. But now I was facing a dilemma, because I thought, "Oh Lord, I'm not living what I preach. What shall I do?" But the Lord really helped me to deliver the message, and actually I'm impressed how the Lord can even use us when we are down. I've seen it over and over again. And so from Brussels, I went back home to see my family in Germany. And I was also getting ready for a health emphasis weekend in Switzerland. Because my pastor from back then, who gave me baptismal studies, he's in charge now of a Hispanic church in Zurich, and he invited me to conduct a health emphasis weekend. But that was, in this situation, was really challenging for me, because I was all by myself. I really wanted to have my Honduras team members with me. But I had to do this all by myself. And I remember I arrived in Zurich a few days beforehand to get ready with everything, and I talked to my pastor about my issues with depression, and he said, "Oh, if you had, that's why you need a husband. He would lift you up when you are down." And I told him, "No, he would not be able to lift me up, because only God can help me. I can only turn to him for help. And he said, but are you actually doing this? And I don't exactly remember what I said, but I didn't say a clear yes. And but at that moment, I realized I really had to take hold of the hand of God. It was in my power to kick this into gear. And shortly before Switzerland, our former co-worker, Reino, he posted on my Facebook timeline, and he said, oh, I just prayed for you. I hope you're doing fine. And so I wrote to him, and I told him about my upcoming plans and about my apprehension there to go to Switzerland and conduct this Health Emphasis weekend. And he wrote, I wouldn't worry too much about the Hispanic church. They are such warm and loving people. They will appreciate anything you offer them. At the end of the day, he will speak through you as he did for Jeremiah, placing his words in your mouth. God will bless, I am sure. And this was a prophetic statement. This is exactly what happened. Although I was all by myself, I didn't have Shanice with me to give the talk on the 8 laws of health. I didn't have Lydia LaJewel with me to give the stress management class. I didn't have Duthie and Elizabeth to help me with the cooking class. I didn't have Ashwin to help with the medical consultations. But the Lord blessed. And one lady that attended the meetings wrote me an email afterwards, and she wrote, Dear Sister Daniela, many thanks for your great help, that you brought me beautiful messages from God. It seemed to me that I was already in heaven for all the good things you have done, and that you have taken the time to share these delicious and healthy recipes from God. And this is not about me. This is the Lord's doing, because I felt completely weak, especially when I gave the talk on stress management for divine service there. I felt weak. I hadn't slept enough the night before, and I said to God, you have to do that in me now. And he did it. For 1 hour and 15 minutes, he gave me the strength to conduct this meeting. And there's this statement in This Day with God, page 26. I picked this up from Lewis's testimony last week. It is not always the man apparently in possession of the greatest capabilities who have the most success in some lines of the work. The Lord uses so-called less capable men. They may not be eloquent, but if they are connected with God, he will richly bless them. Their rugged, solid words coming directly from the heart are of great value and are appreciated by the Lord. And my team members in Honduras, they all gave better lectures than me. And talking to them now, I'm not saying this because I want you to tell me, oh, that's not true, you are the best. It's a fact. And someday I might have as much knowledge as you have on top of your head, and I might be as eloquent as you all are. But this is not what really counts. I'm not playing this down. Of course, we should always strive to give our best. But the most important is that we are willing to be used by God. Okay, I'm coming really to an end now. So I went back to Germany from Switzerland. I spent Easter with my family, and I still had these negative thoughts. They were still haunting me. It was a difficult time, and especially as I'm the only Adventist in my family. And I guess you all have people close to you that you can think of that are destroying their health by wrong lifestyle habits. And my father, he was diagnosed with Parkinson about 3 years ago, and he also struggles with overweight. And he's always open to counsel, it seems. He never objects if I give him an advice, but he doesn't act upon it. And I have told him multiple times, it's not good for you to eat between meals. And it was this one morning, what did he do? He ate between meals again. And in addition, it was something really unhealthy. And I was so sad this morning. And I started running. Since the last GYC meetings, I've been doing 5Ks. And I started this 5K this morning, and afterwards, I felt great. Everything seemed to be fine. And I had experienced that before, that if you exercise, you get all these endorphins, and it really helps to lift the mood, but I have never experienced it in such a distinct way. I mean, I was literally crying when I started running, but afterwards, everything was fine. And also, in these times of depression, I would research on the internet if I find something helpful that could encourage me. And there was one thing that I found on YouTube. It's a little short seminar by a lady, a Christian counselor named Kathy Baker. And it's entitled, "God Help Me, I'm So Depressed." And I found this so encouraging what she said, so I decided to transcribe it. So she said, "How can we become depressed? I think many times it's because we are looking for life to be satisfying, to have that satisfaction, to have a fulfillment of what we expected. The reality is none of us knows what the outcome of our life is, do we? We only know what we lived through and what we are living now. So when we get to the place when we trust God and say, 'God, I trust you. I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I do know that you hold my tomorrows.' When we can get to that place, when we trust God, God comes in and he removes the darkness. And sometimes it's in an instant. But sometimes it's a layer at a time. But even if it's a little change, don't despair, because you are getting a little bit closer to his glory." And I was a bit apprehensive about coming back to Uchee Pines. And a friend of mine told me, "Maybe you will get some peace when you go back there." But I couldn't really believe it. Now I had to mask again that I'm depressed, after all. And I was thinking, I thought, how shall I get through this? I had committed to come back here for another 3 months. But as soon as I arrived here last month, things went uphill. It was within a couple of days that I was doing fine. The situation hadn't changed, but I know I don't need to worry about the future, because it's in his hands. Mount of Blessings, page 100. "If you have given yourself to God to do his work, you have no need to be anxious for tomorrow. He whose servant you are knows the end from the beginning. The events of tomorrow, which are hidden from your view, are open to the eyes of him who is omnipotent." I still don't know what the future holds, but I know who holds the future. Page 101, "Christ has given us no promise of help in bearing today the burdens of tomorrow. He has said, 'My grace is sufficient for thee.' But like the manna given in the wilderness, his grace is bestowed daily for the day's need. Like the hosts of Israel in their pilgrim life, we may find morning by morning the bread of heaven for the day's supply. One day alone is ours, and during this day we are to live for God. For this one day we are to place in the hand of Christ, in solemn service, all our purposes and plans, casting all our care upon him, for he careth for us. I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. In returning and rest shall ye be saved, in quietness and in confidence shall be your strength." And I know that I'm in for some challenges when it comes to going back to my work eventually. But the Lord has prepared everything, and they will give me my old post back that I had before I left in 2014. And it will be tough, I know, but the Lord is at my side, and He called me into this ministry among the rich people, and He will sustain me. And I will ever be thankful for UT Pines, and I'm so thankful that the Lord called the Thrashers to start this ministry. There are so many people who have been blessed by UT Pines, directly or indirectly. And I think it's just too many to count. Only in heaven we will be able to see the full impact that UT Pines has made for eternity. So let's close this evening with a word of prayer. Let's kneel as far as possible. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for UT Pines. Thank you for the Thrashers who you have called to start this ministry back in the 70s. Thank you for the great impact that it has made and that it will still continue to make among many lives. Thank you that you have led me here. Thank you, Father, for everybody who listened to my testimony. And you know what each one goes through here. And I ask you that you may lead and guide them and show them your truth as you have shown me all these things. Lord, help each of us to grow in sanctification and to know your will for our lives, because you have a special place for each one here. Thank you so much. Thank you for the Sabbath. Please bless these special hours. Draw us closer to you. I thank you and ask you in Jesus' name. Amen.